morning. It is Monday, January 19th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Hezbollah threatens retaliation against Israel after reports emerged that an IDF airstrike killed 6 of its militants in Syria. Following the attacks in France, Europe launches a new war on terror. And later on the show, Israel seeks to dismantle the ICC after the court launches a war crimes investigation about the West Bank. Good morning, I'm Yael Avi, and we begin with the latest in the Middle East. The Lebanon-based Shiite group Hezbollah threatens to respond with force after confirming that 6 of its members, including 2 commanders, were killed in what they claim was an Israeli airstrike yesterday on their Syria unit that was operating near the Israeli border. Israel has not officially confirmed it was behind the attack, as it never does. The dead included Mohammed Issa, a Hezbollah commander responsible for its Syrian and Iraqi operations, as well as Jihad Mounier, the son of Imad Mounier, a top Hezbollah operative killed in a 2008 car bombing in Syria, which was also blamed on Israel. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, who was set to give a reaction speech yesterday, postponed his delivery until all facts were made clear, according to Hezbollah reports. Now, to discuss both the military and political sides of the story, we're joined in studio by I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And by Haaretz senior military analyst Amir Oren. Good morning to you. And before we break this down, let's take a look at the following report that recaps what happened on the northern Israeli border late last night.
If the Israelis think that the resistance is weakened or exhausted, or that its capabilities and readiness have been compromised, they are completely deluded and will find out that if they decide to build on these ideas, it will be a foolish act, not just a mistake.
This very clear warning is not from times when the Israeli-Lebanese border was on fire, but from only 3 days ago, allegedly a time of quiet on Israel's northern front. For Israeli security officials, such as Brigadier General Itai Brun, the outgoing head of Israel's military intelligence research division, it is almost a known fact that the next time it wages war against Israel, Hezbollah will likely try to invade Israel. But still, the biggest threat is Hezbollah's impressive ballistic power, armed and trained by Iran, for whom the rocket arsenal is seen as a huge deterrence factor against Israel and its aerial abilities. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah revealed that the organization has Fatah 110 missiles, which have a minimum range of 200 kilometers, 125 miles, that can hit the whole of Israel. According to both American and Israeli security officials, the militia's arsenal is believed to contain over 100,000 rockets, and Hezbollah will aim at combining a massive amount of rockets fired per day, an estimated 1,000, while using those that can reach long distance, targeting strategic facilities. In comparison, in the 2006 conflict, almost all the 4,000 Hezbollah rockets fired were of shorter ranges. Today, the military capability of Hezbollah is a whole different story, something Israel is well aware of, but the big question is whether it is also prepared for.
Amir Oren, I would like to start with you. When something like that happens, and when we saw the reports last night, the son of Imad Mounier, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh my Lord, Hezbollah is going to retaliate. This morning, some conflicting reports. Of course, we're hearing lines coming out of Lebanon that there will be a reaction. Some reports saying that Hezbollah says it's going to be minimized. It's going to be thought after, and others say that Hezbollah is threatening a reaction that is going to be harsh. That said, are we looking at a reaction that's going to be war? Because that's what is on everybody's mind this morning.
Not likely.
Not likely.
Of course, one can never say for sure. Things might get out of hand, and usually mistakes, misjudgments, miscalculations bring about conflicts which the protagonists didn't intend to bring about. But having said that, the basic calculus which underlines Hassan Nasrallah's moves has not changed just because of this particular incident. And this calculus, first of all, has to do with the priority of what is happening in Syria and in Iraq, and that is the Iranian Assad-Hezbollah axis versus ISIS, the Islamic State. For them, the paramount interest is to keep the Levant and Iraq under control.
And Assad in power.
Right. Avoid the disintegration of the Alawite rule of Syria, which could bring disaster to the Shiites in Lebanon, represented by Hezbollah, and therefore any deviation from that to any distraction, to any other front, such as the Israeli one, should wait.
And Talsha, before we go to you, we have Michal Livol, I-24 News correspondent up north on the Israeli border. Michal, good morning to you. I want to hear, is there tension felt? Is there any kind of pre-calculation, more military on the border that we're seeing this morning?
Good morning, Yael. After all the whispers last night after the alleged Israeli airstrike talking about tension and possible war, I have to say it's very quiet here this morning. Other than the snow and the regular patrols, we're not seeing any special movement. Just to give you an idea where we are, a kilometer away from here is the Kunetra crossing, which from a recent media reports is actually in the hands of the Assad forces, and there's been, of course, a back and forth between Assad forces and Jabhat al-Nusra. So the alleged airstrike was carried out not far from the Kunetra crossing, 1 kilometer from where I am at the moment. Here on the border, really not much to report on at the moment, but the day is still young, of course. And from what we're hearing from Hezbollah reports, the attack would receive a proportional reaction as far as the El Manara reports that came out following the strike, but it's not in their interest at the moment, from what the reports are saying, to be drawn into a full-scale war.
Full-scale war.
This is all there is from this morning.
Thank you, Michal, from the northern border. Talsha, I want to ask you, because as Amir also rightfully mentioned, the calculus when somebody does an attack like that is, I think, versus what is the capital out of it for the country attacking, and what is, what can be gained. But so many people yesterday after that report in Israel claimed that this attack came specifically because we're looking at elections. This was coming from also a lot of political voices.
Well, actually, as opposed to the previous attacks that did raise a bit more voices.
The one in December.
The one in December. This one, actually, we did hear one of a very substantial, a very significant candidate, one might say, Yoav Gallant, who is a former army general and is running on Moshe Kahlon's list. He did raise a doubt and raise a question about the timing of this attack. But actually, both Tzipi Livni and Yitzhak Herzog did not criticize Netanyahu about the timing of this attack, and as opposed, and we're just hearing very vague questions from the politicians. It's coming mainly from the press. For the politicians themselves, such an attack that is a successful operation, it wouldn't be wise for them to attack Netanyahu on something that seems to be successful and at least seems to be very high profiled from its achievements point of view. So it wouldn't be wise for Herzog and Livni to come now and attack Netanyahu. But yes, of course, every event like this that we will be having in the upcoming months will bring back the questions and the doubts. Is Netanyahu deciding to pull the trigger because of the timing of the elections? Yesterday, Gallant said it did happen before. He was talking about the Ahmad Jabri assassination before the previous elections. But the fact is, on the other hand, you have many people saying that this is the IDF credibility, the IDF chief of staff credibility. They would, and probably Amir would be wiser to comment about this. They would never approve such an operation if there wasn't a real need to do it.
But then I'm asking you, Amir, almost the same thing. Obviously, if the opportunity arises for the Israeli Defense Forces to make such a targeted hit, they would go for it. But when it comes to people as such, with the Mornier title on it, that can really, really upset Hezbollah and, upset them to the point of flaring up the border, isn't it a dangerous attack just in terms of what that border means?
Yes, it does. And the backstory is always whether the more moderate voices in the general staff and in the intelligence community have weighed the pros and cons of such an attack. Now, obviously, no one, especially 4 weeks before the outgoing chief of staff leaves office, no one wants to take a risk and throw Israel into the unknown. And we are still almost 2 months before the elections. No one knows how this will come about. So every campaign in Israel's history ends with a commission of inquiry or with another sort of investigation. Netanyahu will not necessarily benefit from an involvement now in the north. It is too early for it to have an impact on the elections. So the General Staff would have to recommend such an action only if it was certain, first of all, that it was necessary to foil an attack by Hezbollah, because what have been doing there?
Yeah, exactly.
They were loitering near the border, reconnaissance, of course, prior to an attack on an Israeli settlement or on a military patrol. And there comes a time when Israel cannot avoid taking such action. Now, having said that, if they were certain, knowing through their intelligence channels, that Nasrallah was certain to respond in force, they would have probably not done it. So it's a delicate balance, and all in all, it was probably done.
I mean, that the intelligence calculation was that the Nasrallah is not, it's not within his interest right now to actually proceed and react to this type of an attack.
Nasrallah wants to respond and have said so publicly, and have responded, but up to a measure. He did not do it in a way that would provoke an all-out war.
And just back to the politics, having said all of this, it doesn't mean that Netanyahu doesn't gain from having these kinds of developments in the midst of the election campaign. Any development that brings back the focus to one of his favorite questions and images as the responsible adult who would pick up the red phone, who is responsible to make decisions on foreign policy and security. This is the agenda he wants to have in the headlines and not other socio-economic agendas.
The question he is asking really is, yes, I got you into this mess, but who better than I to take you out of it?
To take you out of it. And real quickly, Amir, last thing to you, when it comes to the reaction of Hezbollah, if you're looking at it, one of the reasons, I mean, there's talk this morning that the people actually keeping Hezbollah in check are Iran, because it behooves them to keep everything quiet for possible nuclear deals with the West. Can you look at it that way?
The Iranians are calling the shots with Hezbollah, but it is not because of the nuclear talks. In the nuclear talks, they are writing the script, and they don't really care if the talks are prolonged. They don't want a flare-up in Lebanon or in the Israeli-Lebanese border, because it is now more urgent for them to win the campaign against the Islamic State, in which they are cooperating silently with the United States and, in fact, with Israel too.
Yeah, thank you both for joining me on this subject this morning as we move on. Moving on to the war on terror in Europe, with troops patrolling the streets of Belgium, soldiers stationed in Jewish schools in France, and protests canceled in Germany over terror threats. Europe is slowly coming to grips with the fact that it can no longer continue life as usual and is looking for ways to respond to the threat of what appears to be homegrown extreme Islamist terrorism. In the wake of the terror attacks in Paris and the realization that they were not isolated incidents restricted to France, police and counterterrorism forces across Western Europe carried out raids on suspected terror cells in the case of Brussels, thwarting an attack just hours before it was launched, according to Belgian security sources. Now, this Thursday, the UK and US will be hosting a conference of the 20-member of the anti-ISIS coalition to discuss the progress so far on tackling extreme Islamist militants. Among the items discussed in London will be foreign fighters, the military campaign against ISIS targets, its sources of finances, strategic communication, and humanitarian assistance. But before we begin this discussion on Europe's dealing with the new terror threat, let's take a look at the following report detailing the latest developments in the European continent.
From country to country across Europe this morning, the dragnet of potential terrorists growing amid fears of more attacks. Just last night, 2 more suspects arrested in Athens, Greece, bringing the total to almost 36 people detained across Europe in the past 72 hours. Belgian media reporting authorities are looking for the 27-year-old Belgian who was in Syria with ISIS, now possibly in Greece. He's allegedly the mastermind behind the cell in Belgium planning to kill police officers, raided just hours before the attack was launched. The crackdown coming as security is beefed up across the continent. France, after the Paris attacks, at its highest alert level. 120,000 police and soldiers in the streets. Here in Belgium, heavily armed troops patrolling for the first time in 3 decades. These Belgian soldiers have been deployed with machine guns to stand guard at sensitive sites like government buildings and embassies. This is the American one. Officials here in Belgium fearing it could be a target. In the UK, the threat against police raised to severe, the highest ever, meaning an attack is highly likely. And in Germany, extra police at transportation hubs. Also under threat, Europe's Jewish communities.
I think the threat is serious because they are a target we know terrorists like. They need to be protected.
In Paris, we saw police evacuate congregants from a synagogue.
Do you feel that the Jewish community is being targeted now?
Of course, yes. The questions now are how many more sleeper cells are out there, and can European authorities, who are working closely with American intelligence, track them down before another attack happens? Alex Marquardt, ABC News, Brussels.
We're joined in studio by Dr. Amichai Magen from the Institute for Counterterrorism at the Herzliya Interdisciplinary Center. Good morning to you. Also by Mr. Tzvi Bisk, founder of the Center for Futurist and Strategic Thinking. Good morning to you. First, though, I would like to go to Paris, France. Our correspondent, I24 News, contributor Marie Cartier. Marie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, taking a look at Europe and many talks in the European press over the course of the last several days, there seems to be a concerted effort around European countries to take a stronger push against what they call homegrown terror cells, sleeper cells. What are the reactions of the people of Europe when it comes to stricter measures being put in place?
Yeah, you're right. Across Europe, there is a fear of sleeper cells. Actually, 20 sleeper cells, which represent more or less 200 people, could be ready to strike in France, Germany, Greece, or Belgium, as we saw in the report. The difficulty, actually, for the intelligence service is how to find all the possible connection with the Kouachi brother. Several suspects are being held in the police in France, Greece, UK also, and Germany. And what the difficulty is to make clearly the link between those, because for the moment no links have been clearly established. So all the police in Europe are trying to gather the information and to share their expertise with each other and collaborate in their investigation. We can say, this is a big discussion at the European level, actually. And the head of the European Law Agency said that it was, of course, impossible to prevent all attacks plots because it is extremely difficult to identify the enemy as far as terrorists no longer have a unique and identifiable command and control structure.
No, very correct points, especially when it comes to what we're looking at, homegrown terror, so to speak. But Marie, stay with us. Dr. Amichai Magen, I want to start with you. I mean, we can talk about the so-called wake-up call to Europe, but at the end of the day, if this is indeed homegrown terror, and these are people who actually maybe went to Syria, came back, whatnot, sleeper cells, as Marie has just mentioned, is Europe even set in, has mechanisms in place to try and combat that? That's something that we know, people in the Middle East know, is something that yet is to be configured how to battle terror like that.
Well, Europe really faces a tremendous challenge for a number of reasons. The first, which you've alluded to, is Europe prepared to deal with these issues? And we have to remember that this is a civilization, 500 million people, who for the last 70 years, essentially, since the end of the Second World War, have not only outsourced their security to a great extent. Europeans spend less than 2% of their GDP on security and defense. But the entire concept of European integration is built on notions of multiculturalism, of openness, of free movement of goods, of persons. And we can get into deeper layers of identity, post-nationalism, post-modernism, post-religion. And Europe is beginning to wake up from a very long slumber, and that is a deep social, cultural change that will take time, and it will be very costly for Europe to make that transition. This is not something that can happen overnight. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the complexity of the terrorism challenge that Europe faces, I think that we haven't really begun to really internalize. This is not just an issue of domestic lone wolf, local terrorism, or foreign fighters coming back. This is much more dynamic. Okay, we have to bear in mind that Europe is has an infrastructure not only of radical Salafist jihadi terrorism, but also Shia terrorism. We've been speaking today about Hezbollah and what Hezbollah might do. And Hezbollah has acted in Europe famously. In Burgas, there were cells of Hezbollah operatives caught in Cyprus, in Greece. We may very well see a rise in Shia-led terrorism in Europe in the coming years. There is also an interesting.
Is that something that's predicted by security analysts?
That is something that we see a pattern of this activity. We know that there is an extensive Hezbollah infrastructure in Europe, and clearly what happens in Lebanon and Syria, and where Hezbollah is unable to hit heavily protected Israeli targets. In Israel, it may seek alternative targets, potentially in Latin America, potentially in Asia. This has happened in India, in Thailand, in Nepal, and so on and so forth, but also potentially in Europe. So the threat is multi-layered and complex, and it's also very fluid. It's extremely difficult to really follow the number that ranges somewhere between 9,000 and 14,000 Europeans who have traveled. Turkey is a porous gateway. The Balkans are a porous gateway. There are reports of Ireland and also Austria being hubs of transport and so on and so forth. So this is really a complex, multi-layered problem that Europe now is just beginning to really grapple with.
No, if they're beginning to grapple with it, and you know, I'm a futurist and strategist, Tzvi Bisk, I'm wondering out loud with you, I don't know if the European Union or the creation of it has helped in the attempt, or will help in the attempt to try and combat this, but isn't there also a danger, as this war on terror gets a new direction, which I think we're still waiting to see which one, that it also brings rise to right-wing agendas in Europe, brings rise to animosities towards minorities. So what can be the strategy when it comes to that, so Europe does not lose its pluralistic, or the attempt of a pluralistic nature?
Okay, first, let's look at the historical record of the EU. For the past 70 years, there have been no wars between France and Germany. The 70 years before that, there were 3 more wars. 2 were quite major, and 1 really affected us. The second thing is they succeeded in absorbing and democratizing 3 fascist countries, Portugal, Spain, and Greece.
But subsequently, the continent is bleeding money. But financially, they ain't doing so well. Yeah.
You know, the United States, 72 years after the Constitution, wasn't doing too well either. In other words, civilizations go through certain phases, and Europe is in better shape than we think it is. It absorbed over a dozen former communist countries. The challenge now is to democratize. It's a twofold challenge: democratize their own Muslim citizens while fighting the Islamist threat. It's sort of a variation of Ben-Gurion's statement on the white paper. We'll fight the white papers if there's no Nazis. We'll fight the Nazis as if there is no. The first thing they have to do, in my opinion, is sort of reconquer those parts of their own countries that have been occupied by Islamists. France has something like 750 no-go areas where the police, the firemen don't go. In other words, where the Republic does not rule and the Constitution does not rule.
But when you say reconquer, what does that mean?
They have to reestablish law and order in these areas. It's not only France. It's in Germany. It's in England. It's in Holland. It's in Scandinavia. That's number one. In terms of a grand strategic, in terms of the Islamist threat, in my opinion, they have to initiate what I would call a 5th Geneva Convention on Asymmetric Warfare, which enables states to declare war on non-state actors. And that puts the entire framework in the framework of international law. So we won't have this nonsense of what extrajudicial killings and things like that. If they're their enemy and you're at war with them, you're allowed to kill them. You don't have to Mirandize them.
I think that's a million-dollar question, Marie. I'm glad you're still with us, because I'm wondering out loud with you, if there was something, as suggested here, so to speak, reconquering these no-go zones in France, for example. I am sure there's a lot of discussion, even after the horrific massacre at Charlie Hebdo and the Hyper Cacher, that, you know, what does that mean for the Muslim community if there's going to be more, you know, force used against them, or is there even talk about that?
Yes, there are talk about that, but the issue is not whether the Muslim community is targeted in France, because the French government takes care not to put all things together. So I think that the big issue is how to produce a coherent European counter-terrorism strategy, because we saw in the last recent years that it has produced little results. Actually,
exactly.
What people want actually on the judiciary level is laws of exception, such as the Patriot Act in the United States. So this is quite new in the European mind, right, because they think it might take
infringe on
liberties.
Infringe on liberties. And so, Dr. Chaim, again, I'm wondering with you, because you said it rightfully so. It's going to take time for Europe to try and figure out a way, but nobody's figured out a way. And then if we're looking at something like, a Patriot Act in Europe, or something like, in places, I think in the UK, they don't even extradite people.
Yeah. Well, there's no silver bullet solution to terrorism challenge. A coherent and effective counterterrorism strategy really has three fundamental legs, or three fundamental layers to it. The first is reducing the motivation of attack, and that could use both sticks and carrots. Sticks meaning better intelligence, stiffer penalties, denying citizenship, maybe using administrative detention where necessary, but also carrots, greater integration, greater opportunities to really isolate the extremists and to make the pool of potential attackers as small as you possibly can. So one leg of the strategy has to be reducing motivation. The second leg of the strategy has to be improving the capacity of society to deal with this. This has to do with public resilience, public awareness. Also, intelligence is very important, and operational capacity. And the third component is really disrupting or reducing the capacity of terrorists to carry out attack. This has to do with organization. This has to do with weapons, and so on and so forth. And building those three legs, those three capacities, will take time.
Will take time, but as you said, I think maybe the reintegration, or as Mr. Biscom suggested, it's not just taking it back, but it's in the incentive to reduce motivation for attacks, which I think that's the million-dollar question. Sadly, all the time we have. I want to thank you all for being with me. Marie, thank you very much, in Paris, France as well. When we get back, the International Criminal Court will investigate possible war crimes carried out in the West Bank and in and around the territories in Israel. Israel condemns this decision as an outrageous probe. We will take a closer look. First, though, let's hear some more of this morning headlines. We will be back right after them. Welcome back. It is still January
19th.
Thank you. 2015. It's your morning edition on I-24 News. Thank you for being with us, the place you should be, because this is where we say hello and good morning to Anthony Grant, who joins us daily to discuss the news you missed while scanning the headlines. And what did we miss?
Well, here's an interesting headline. You know that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is visiting Israel?
I heard.
Yes, no, it's actually true.
Yes.
Lovely headline from the Jerusalem Post says that Netanyahu, Israel's Prime Minister, says that Israel must open Asian markets due to anti-Semitism in Europe. So
we're moving out of Europe. And okay,
interesting. You think that Japan might want to hear that there's other reasons involved in wanting to open up the market, but hey, we're
sort of so we're coming in.
Yeah. So anyway, he'll be here for a little while, so I'm sure they'll discuss that and other things as well.
But it's very much touted as the high-tech, so to speak, visit, collaboration, and whatnot.
Yeah, that as well.
And moving
John
on,
McCain's in town too. A different story. The Mirror, interesting story resonating with a lot of Americans. Britney Spears' ex-lover, one of them, has been killed by the Taliban in Afghanistan, leaving the pop star devastated. Now,
I don't even know how to react to this. I'm speechless.
Who knew? Who knew that
that's definitely a headline we missed.
Yeah, Britney Spears. I didn't. That's what I'm here for. In 2007, Britney Spears dated John Sundal, a pilot. He actually helped her get off of alcohol. She was having some issues, and he helped her guide her through that. Kept in touch with him. He was a private contractor. He was flying flying a helicopter from Kabul.
Right.
And the Taliban
and
apparently shot him down last week.
And after he moved to Afghanistan, I had to say that.
It's a strange headline, but it shows that Afghanistan remains a very dangerous place, even for private contractors. Brittany.
That was such a PC way of getting out of that headline. Tony, God bless. Yes.
And God bless Brittany. Our thoughts are with her, because it is actually a very sad story.
Sure. Yes.
Also, going from sad to tragic, Haaretz reports that a year on, ISIS still holds a third of Iraq, because the fall of Fallujah happened in January 2014, not that long ago, and that started the Islamic State group's dramatic blitz across Iraq, the Israeli paper says.
It's a fascinating headline. I'm glad you brought this to our attention, because it's a year on, but a year ago this came as such a surprise to the entire Western world.
Out of the blue in many ways, and a third of Iraq, it's a big chunk of territory. So
no, it's Iraq, if one can even call it Iraq, still a country that no longer exists.
Fractured country, a lot of concerns to say the least. Daily Star Beirut reports that Lebanese lawyers have been attacked by their Syrian colleagues at a conference in Cairo. Yes. Basically, a lawyer with the Future Movement, which is, of course, the party of Rafik Hariri in Lebanon, said at a hearing, at a conference, that the Egyptian army, I'm quoting, defended its people twice while the Syrian army is killing their people. So this sparked an instant melee. And it was caught on tape. So the lawyers are fighting amongst themselves in Cairo, where we don't like to see that. But
no, we don't.
Anyway, interesting story, one more from La Dernière Heure in Brussels, says that Mehdi Koulibaly, the assailant in the attack on the kosher market in Paris, took out a €6,000 credit line with French company Cofidis 1 month ahead of the attacks, and used that to apparently buy his weapons. He also took out a life insurance policy. So, I guess it was easy for some in that environment to get a line of credit.
I mean, we've dealt him in the first half hour of the show today with Europe's new battle, or the attempt to find a strategy to battle this homegrown terror. But this just shows how well entrenched. Yeah, completely. Yeah, very, very well entrenched within the society, a civilian, a citizen that can actually go ahead and do whatever they want until they get the AK-47. No, definitely.
So more revelations coming out day by day in the Belgian and French press about the attacks.
One more?
We also have Baz News, which is a source of news in Kurdistan, says that the Syrian regime is now shelling, apparently for the third day running, the Kurdish town of Hasaka. Bad stuff going on there, and of course there was sort of the de facto agreement that that Assad's forces would leave about 30% of the town alone because of its being Kurdish in that area, but apparently that's breaking down and there's fighting underway.
No, the fracturized map that is the Middle East, everything emanating from. Coming from that civil war is really quite frightening. Thank you, Tony. Stay with us as we move on to the next segment. Were war crimes committed in the Palestinian territories? The International Criminal Court has opened a preliminary examination into Israel's actions last July and August in the Gaza Strip, which opens up the possibility of war crimes charges against Israel, or alternatively, the Palestinians. Palestinians welcomed the first step after President Abbas initiated their ICC membership late last year in the absence of peace talks. But some, including the United States, Canada, and Israel, have slammed the bid, calling it an outrage and counterproductive. So, is the ICC really capable of carrying out a full and impartial investigation? And will it help or hinder the quest for peace? Joining me to help answer at least some of these questions is Irit Kuhn, president of the Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists and former head of the Justice Ministry International Department. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And Michal Chatuel, an expert on state stigmatization at the Tel Aviv University. Thank you for being with me this morning. Also on the phone, Dimitri Diliani, member of the Fatah Revolutionary Council. Dimitri, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I'd like to start with you real quick, Dimitri, because, this ICC move that has been dominating the news in the Middle East for many, many weeks now, and now the court decides to go ahead, the court in The Hague decides to go ahead and investigate this charge, which is all brought about by Mahmoud Abbas. I'm going to ask you a question I ask you every time. What is the progress that can be gained from this when it comes to actual peace negotiations? Isn't this a step that actually is hindering any possibility of sitting down?
After the right-wing government of Israel has shut the doors in the face of any negotiations, the Palestinian leadership and at the same time continued to infringe on our rights as Palestinian people through settlements, through aggression, through killings, through confiscating of land, through putting Gaza and Jerusalem under siege, through continuous ethnic cleansing in many parts of the Palestinian state as recognized around the world, including East Jerusalem. The Palestinian leadership found no other alternative but to hold the state of Israel and its right-wing government accountable for their actions. This does not substitute for negotiations at all.
No, of course, but Dimitri, it doesn't substitute, but how will this progress it? Because now we're looking at a battle in the international arena.
The battle in the international arena was what the state of Israel forced us to go that way, since negotiations were always hit by the wall of continuous settlement activity and other infringements of our rights in the West Bank and Gaza. For us as Palestinian people, the status quo could not be maintained. It's intolerable. And the state of Israel, led by the right-wing government, is just continuously increasing its aggression. And they have to understand that they will be put accountable for these actions, and let the world justice system decide whether the state of Israel and its leaders are committing war crimes or not. We claim that they are. Israel claims that they're not, so let the courts decide.
No, as usually is the case when it comes to Israel and Palestinians, but sadly, so do stay with us, Dimitri, because I want to turn to the lovely ladies in the studio. Irit, I would love to start with you. If this is a zero-sum game on the Palestinian side, is this actually a move, though? I mean, at the end of the day, I think there were 98 attempts to sue. I'm not sure about the number, or several, dozens of attempts to sue people in the ICC, and only 2 actually came about. Is this something that actually is going to come about, or are we still in the phase of these, so-called, PR moves, which is the way I look at it?
It sounds like a PR. It's more serious than a PR. We have to remember that it's a preliminary investigation, and in the preliminary investigation, we can check many, many things. Now, the question is how the state of Israel is going to react to it. If I would be the person to suggest what to do, I would try to be in touch with the ICC. Doesn't matter that you don't agree that they have a jurisdiction. You can give them material to persuade them that they don't have jurisdiction because that the state of Palestine, so-called, is not a state. Our association, for example, tried to do it. We sent a material to the ICC prosecutor and tried to tell them that all the conditions that we need in order to be a state are not being fulfilled here. This is one thing. The second thing is, legally, concerning the settlements, we have many, many things that we could say, and we could try to persuade them. Trying to be in touch with them at the preliminary stage, like other states that are not members, like Russia did, doesn't say that we say that they have jurisdiction. So we have a lot of persuading legal things in order to try to convince them, shouting out of them, saying that we'll take we will persuade countries not to give money to the ICC, etc. I don't think that this is serious.
I have to say, for the sake of full disclosure, we did turn to the Israeli Foreign Ministry and ask for a reaction, but there seems to be a sweeping decision not to react to it also in the media to the current investigation at the ICC. And Hatuel, I want to ask you, though, then what should be the reaction, as Irit just mentioned, be it joining hand forces and trying to, bring forth evidence to the ICC, or what can the state of Israel do at this point?
I think that the state of Israel can do a lot, and it's not doing half as much as it can be doing and should be doing.
Such as what?
Such as, firstly, if I look at UN documents over the past 10 years, even more, we can see that on the Palestinian side, there is a serious, concerted effort of NGOs that have legitimate UN consultative status, that send out statements and that appear before committees, and that their data and their statements are circulated to different committees in the Knesset by the Secretary General, and there is no counter effort on the Israeli side. I think that when there are the Shavuot Committee now, and they are taking testimonies, I think that Israel should make a serious effort to send more delegations. I don't think that it should be something that's left to the NGOs. I think that there's a lot to do in that respect, and not enough is being done. I think that Israel's the main paradigm that we are working under is that, and I've even heard calls about this yesterday. The International Criminal Court it's non-legitimate. It doesn't have the mandate, or it shouldn't. But these things are happening, and we need to respond. The response can't be, oh, this is illegitimate, so we're taking our hands out of the game. This is something that's happening around us, concerning us. It's in our interest to act.
No, I mean, I'm sure that actually even, Dimitri Deliani will agree. And Dimitri, I want to ask you real quickly, in the respect of, turning to the ICC, but did the Palestinian Authority realize also there's a chance that if Israel were to cooperate in that way, or as you suggest, that the Palestinian side could also, will also be under investigation?
Yes, we totally understand that, and we think that, we believe that our actions throughout the struggle have been in adherence to international law, which grants us the right to defend and to liberate our land in every which way we find feasible. Now, for us, we have chosen, as a PLO and Fatah movement, we chose a nonviolent track to.
That could be argued by others differently, Dimitri. I think the Israeli, on many levels, not just the Israeli security forces, would argue differently. But looking really quickly to you, looking at the outcome of this, where can this lead at this point?
Look, it's going to take a long time. We know that there are many preliminary investigations that takes years. I'm not so sure that the prosecutor, if she's smart, would go into such a conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis, which you can say, I don't have time to react to what Dimitri said now, but I have a lot of things to say. The thing is very, very, very complicated. We, the International Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, decided to send witnesses to the Shabbos Committee. Now, Michal said that we should cooperate with the State of Israel. Had I been the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, had I read the 3 pages of the Human Rights Council that was adopting by this committee, meaning this is a conviction. It's not even a verdict. The 3 pages that came and led to this commission already said everything that Israel was to be blamed to. So being the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, to cooperate with such a committee, it's very difficult. Being the president of International Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists, it's much easier. And that's why we wanted to bring before the Shabbos Committee the real picture of what's happening here in the green line with civil people in Israel, civilians in Israel. So this is my objective, the way that I see it, that what's going to happen. It's going to take a long time, but we should give material trying to convince the ICC at the preliminary situation that there is no basic to go on with the ICC into this conflict.
I'd like to add another point, if I may. I think that one of the things that can seriously help Israel is also to conduct our own independent investigation into those the conduct over the summer and present that. And I think in that way we can certainly help ourselves and perhaps.
No, it's written in the treaty of the ICC. The minute that the state is doing the serious thing about it, the serious thing investigation about it, then the ICC is stepping out. That's what we have to persuade them.
Well, that would be actually advice and good advice to the heads of Israel at this point on the lead up to elections. Thank you all for joining me. When we get back, speaking of elections, Israel's election campaign, it heats up as the parties go on the offensive on television. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. It is still Monday, January 19th, 2015. This is still the morning edition. I am still Yael Avi, last I checked, and still there is no war yet where we're sitting, which is a good thing. But elections are coming up. It's less than 60 days before elections, and the political arena is heating up with new campaign material coming out on a daily basis, most of it attack-oriented, of course. We need the likes of Tal Shalev to guide us through the minefield that is the Israeli political campaign on local television. Tal, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Please hit me with No, let's start with Bibi. You talk.
Well, as you mentioned, just like the whole big picture is that we are less than 2 months ahead of the elections, and the Democratic parties in the past few weeks have completed their primary elections and have presented their slates. The monarch parties, the other kind of parties that are not Democratic parties, are also presenting their candidate lists, and basically now is this time that the campaigns are starting to gear up and
get really dirty.
But besides Yair Lapid, the leader of the Center Yesh Atid party, former finance minister, who has been storming the streets and auditoriums, meeting hundreds of people almost every day.
The pavement. He's all over the place.
Most of what we're seeing at the moment is only on social media. So besides Yair Lapid, everyone else is mainly focusing at this point, at this hour, only on social media. We have not yet seen other parties start ground campaigning with meeting in rallies. We're not seeing a massive presence on the ground of politicians yet, mainly in social media. But yes, we will be starting with my favorite, first and foremost, Prime Minister. The Israeli Prime Minister, these elections...
Control yourself. Yes, okay.
I don't know, I think, look at the smile.
Okay. These Israeli, yes, you were saying.
It's my favorite topic, okay?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so these elections are about, we've been talking about it a lot, they're about the Bibi King thesis. There is a notion in the Israeli public, and this is constantly showed in the polls, that Netanyahu is the only responsible adult, and that Netanyahu is the only one who is suitable to lead the country in terms of statesmanship, in terms of security, in terms of foreign policy. And this has been, the responsible adult is actually, he's been using it as an emerging repetitive motive in his election campaign in the past few days. But he's been doing it in a very interesting way. So let's start with a video he releases. Last Friday, on Friday, Netanyahu releases the video under the headline, "Who will pick up the red phone?" Let's see it.
We all know the red phone. Let's take a look.
וואי, זה אובמה.
אבאלה.
בקו הנזיפות.
אימאלה.
אני פה.
אז תעני.
אתה תענה אתה.
אבל אנחנו ברוטציה.
נכון, אבל היום אתה צריך לענות.
לא, ציפוש, נו,
לא,
די.
תענה אתה.
אני לא יכול עכשיו,
לא,
את יודעת,
בוז'י,
אני
זה
לא
לא
בנוי
רלוונטי,
לזה.
זה לא עובד ככה. אנחנו סיכמנו על רוטציה.
אבל די, ציפוש.
תתעזר בבגרות ופשוט תענה.
גורמת לי להגביר את הכל.
קדימה, תתמודד. לא, אתה לא יכול לסגת שזה לא מוצא חן בעיניך. זה לא עובד ככה, בוז'י. סליחה, אנחנו דיברנו על זה. אני סופרת עד 3.
Yeah. God, I mean, I'm wondering how many years, Tony's laughing, how many years we're going to play off the red phone Hillary Clinton / line from the American campaign. It's 3 a.m. I got to say, at this stage, when I see that, I don't want any of them to pick up the phone. Right? Any of them. Yes.
We might give it back to Livni and Herzog, who did release their own campaign video with an answer. They were saying the question in their video is that the question of this election is not who will answer the phone in Jerusalem at 3 o'clock in the morning, but who's calling exactly? Who exactly is even calling President Obama at Washington at 3 o'clock in the morning? He's definitely not calling. And this, of course, video was also under a critic and under fire because it has some chauvinistic motives. It is a bit chauvinistic, and also some on social media there was a lot of question marks about the cartoon, and is it maybe a bit not like 10 years ago? Maybe we're like in the.
No, it's true. The animation is it's very South Parky and very 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
In many ways.
But it created the buzz, and I think that in the end is one of the big questions. It created a good buzz. Everyone was laughing. I mean, everyone was
even
smiling.
Tony.
Even Tony.
So there's that.
But that wasn't enough for Netanyahu. No. He likes cartoons, and he also likes. Apparently, we missed him out on his career as an actor because on Saturday he releases a campaign video of him.
Did you see this one?
Arnold Schwarzenegger, a kindergarten cop. Let's see this video.
Please. Let's take a look at the campaign Bibi video. Yes.
ילדים, תירגעו, אנחנו לא נצליח לעשות כלום היום. אתה מוכרח ללמוד לחלוק עם הילדים האחרים. כן, הוא אח. יאיר, די לשחק עם זה, אתה הורס את זה.
אני תפסתי,
נפתלי, די לריב על הכיסא. ציפי. ציפי, די לרוץ ממקום למקום. חבל על הזמן, אי אפשר להמשיך עם גל הילדים הזה. כדי לנהל מדינה צריך ממשלה חזקה ויציבה.
Okay.
I gotta hand it to him, though. Listen.
You gotta hand it to him.
You gotta hand it to him. First of all, I'm horrified.
No,
the kids, no.
It's
but
funny,
the script is...
Okay, so let's talk about the kids and then we'll start.
Yeah,
okay, so the kids, it was a bit of a gaffe. Sometimes that happens with Netanyahu's campaign.
I'm a mother. You don't send your kids to be in a political campaign commercial.
Okay, so after it was released and spread viral on social media, that suddenly it appears to be that the video might be violating the elections law that forbid using children in election campaign. So then the Likud party's reaction was that the parents did give their consent. The parents of the children did give their consent, but they still said it was a mistake that it was released that the video was released without being authorized. But again, it made the buzz, okay? It made the buzz. In the buzz factor, it succeeded. But let's talk about Bibi, about our prime minister, who really, I gotta give it to him, and I've been covering him for a few years. At the second election, I've very closely, he didn't have it in him, this kind of a creative gift, or I don't know.
The thing that's interesting about this commercial, and as you said before we saw it, is that it's the Bibi thesis. It's going full on with the mantra that he supposedly is the only person that can be in charge of the state of Israel, which if that's that mantra, if I was running a different campaign, would be, that's slightly a frightening notion. Somebody has to react to it, I think, from the other parties of, come on, that's not the only guy who can run this country.
Well, that's what they're trying to do, but not so successful in the meanwhile.
Bibi's got a 6-year-old kid with a beard.
Exactly. No, listen, we have to say Netanyahu has a point. His coalition partners, and himself too, amongst them, but most of the Israeli politicians are not very grown up. They do have, and especially Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett, they had this whole bromance going on, and suddenly the bromance broke up, and now they're enemies. This is stuff that the Israeli public...
I would counter that and say that Naftali Bennett, within Benjamin Netanyahu's government, kept saying horrific things about the prime minister, and he didn't do anything about it.
No, of course. Everyone, I'm just saying, they're all kids. They're all kids. Exactly.
Okay.
But Netanyahu, that wasn't enough, okay? Yes. Yesterday, he felt like, it seems like he's really in some kind of regression to his teenage years, because yesterday he posted a photo album on Facebook with all of his foreign buddies, let's say. It's like, look, I have friends. I'm the most popular kid in town.
This is the reaction to the Labour Party's campaign of, but who's calling you? Yeah.
Netanyahu is trying to counter the criticism and the campaign coming from the center-left parties of international isolation. So he goes up on Facebook and he posts a photo, 6 or 7 or 8 photos of him with foreign leaders.
Me and my buddies.
Explaining, this is me and my buddies, here, and these are the meetings I had last week in Europe. So he did show, this is yesterday, the Japanese prime minister, but he showed pictures. This is behind the scenes. Mark Rutte, the Dutch prime minister, last week in Paris, he did post a series of photos from last week behind the scenes in his Paris visit, and he also says
with the international strong power that is Holland.
Well, okay, Martin Schulz, former president of the European Parliament, there is a photo with Mario Renzi, the Italian prime minister, and what Netanyahu says, his message is, some of these meetings produce silent contacts. We cannot discuss them in public. So Netanyahu is trying to create this facade image to the public that he has, A, he has friends, and B, he's doing secret stuff with them.
Tasha of I-24 News diplomatic correspondent. He's got friends, and he's doing secret stuff with them. God bless you. Stay with us, locked in studio, because Tony Grant, with the spiral viral that is the web review, try and top that.
Well, I cannot.
You cannot.
I don't even want to go there. But actually, speaking of politics, what we could talk about is what they're talking about in Hollywood with the Oscars, how Selma was left out, and a lot of I know you love that movie, and it's a great movie. I know.
I left Selma, and I was like, this movie has to win all the Oscars,
and it's not going to win any apparently. So very controversial.
It's only nominated as Best Picture, right? But none of the
actors,
not the director,
and the director, the woman director, which could be another chance to have another woman director win the Oscar.
Except for the one that won in the history of Hollywood, yes.
Yeah, but it's very controversial, and that's why I'd rather focus on what Cher may or may not have been smoking when she tweeted this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's read it out loud.
I think Hitler, Goebbels, Goering, and Himmler and Hess are living in iCloud. Now, you want to talk about relevance, you want to talk about Nazis, pop stars.
Was that retweeted?
That was. We don't know why.
I almost want to come out and say, see, children, this is what happens when too much plastic surgery is
I was thinking. I mean, now we know Apple is up to weird things, but I don't think they're as all bad as that. I hope not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We
not just Hitler. It's Goebbels. It's Himmler.
It's all of them.
It's all of them.
Yeah, in the iCloud. According to Cher.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Hollywood. Box office shocker. The American Sniper has made hand over fist money this weekend, Martin Luther King Jr. Weekend. $105 million or something by the end of today is projected. So Clint Eastwood's big movie.
Speaking
huge
back to
stuff.
The point of Tal Shalev, because this movie is nominated for almost everything, isn't it?
I think so. I mean,
nominated for it's best actor, it's director as well.
It's a winner of a title. I mean, a little bit of it's just.
I'm sure it's a great movie, but this is kind of a white man's director, white man's agenda.
Yeah, well, and I think it appeals to a lot of American Sniper. It's very
macho.
Yeah.
Well, they've been saying that since last year they gave 12 Years a Slave the Oscar on such a. Then it's like, that was that year.
We gotta go back to the white.
Slavery was that year.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, people are still talking about the transgender cover of In Touch Weekly. According to a lot of controversy here, we had In Touch with a sort of a photoshopped rendition of Bruce Jenner, which has stirred some controversy because it's his life as a woman, but it's what they think he would look like if he goes all the way.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it looks like a very nice sort of Tootsie-ish 1980s, good-looking woman. However,
he does look like Tzippi Livni a little bit.
A lot of blush on the cheekbones there, though. Anyway, Kris Jenner, his ex, has threatened to cut off all access to Kardashian red carpet events in retaliation. So, I mean, can you blame her? I mean,
no.
But she's sticking up for her ex, and I mean, it's just Bruce Jenner. I mean, Olympic Wheaties box.
I don't even know what to say.
It's crazy. Instagram is crackling with Amber Rose, who has actually taken a ruminative pose to the next level by posing. Quite provocatively. We have a picture of it. There we go. Yeah. So she is kind of bending the Instagram rules a bit because, they tend to crack down on this sort of stuff.
I have to lean back.
Yeah.
I have to lean back.
Yeah.
Good morning to you, too.
Yeah. Listen, you could say it's statuesque and artsy, or you could say it's Instagram porn. I don't know, but she's pushing the envelope. I don't know.
Child, what would you vote for? That's Instagram porn.
I have to say it's quite aesthetic.
I think it is actually aesthetic. It kind of grows on you.
Yeah.
Guys, that's Instagram porn.
Yes. Upscale gossip news. Hello Magazine report. Hello Magazine. Yes. Mick Jagger is donating a fashion scholarship in Lorenz Scott's name, which is very nice, to the Central St. Martin's Fashion School. Of course, Lorenz's tragic death was in March 2014. So Mick Jagger is kind of stepping up to the plate and is going to be cultivating new fashion talent somewhere there in London.
Adult, behave classy, tribute.
Speaking of class, Mariah Carey.
Wow.
She will be
of glitter fame.
Yes, well, she'll be taking up residency in Las Vegas, I think, in May or something. And so people are saying, is she gonna be able to fill those seats? I don't know.
I think she will.
Yeah, with number one.
Yeah, she's a thing.
She's a thing. It's gonna be.
It's all about the buzz, remember?
The buzz. Speaking of Mariah Carey and glitter.
Yes, real quick.
Okay, online glitter shipper guru has begged users to stop ordering his glitter. This was. Yes.
Okay.
There's a site where you can like ship glitter to your enemies for like $9.
Yes.
Yes. You just send your enemies boxes of glitter.
Yes.
Apparently, the site has been so popular that it's like sort of been on the fritz. So
30
no more
seconds
glitter.
or something, but that gave me such a fabulous idea. Okay, all the time we have. Tal Shalev, Tony Grant, thank you very much. When we get back, Google Glass is no longer with us, or so we think. Stick with us. First, headlines. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on this fateful Monday, January 19th, 2015, and it is a fateful Monday, not just because we're joined in studio by the amazing gorgeous, amazing Chen Lieberman, but because it is the day of the week that Shai Ringel of the Tube magazine has graced us with his presence.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Shai. Looking slightly terrified there, but you're here with some, what I find actually very, very cheerful news, and that is the demise and death of Google Glass.
Yeah, this is the day. Today, Google Glass is over. Google Google announced Thursday that today on the 19th they will stop selling the Google Glass for the Explorer pack, and that means that you can no longer buy your Google Glass.
Or be a glass hole.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody.
But wait, we need to see what this Google Glass thing meant to begin with. So when we were all getting excited for wearable tech, what is this? What are they called? Tech and tech clothes. This was the promise that was Google Glass. Let's have a look. It didn't sell.
No,
I mean, come on.
Look at it. They wanted to be a fashion accessory. They at the beginning, Google Glass was kind of ugly, but then they went after glass manufacturers and they tried to make it more fashionable.
I mean, here's what they did. They picked like good-looking people to wear it.
Asymmetrical, and that it can be really complimentary.
No, but my question to you, Shai, is what did it do? Wasn't it supposed to be this amazing snazzy thing that kind of you're connected all the time, and what did it do?
Look, they wanted it to be a phone that you don't have to take your eyes off the wall to look at it. That was the idea. That means that if you're driving and you want to see a message or a map, you don't have to take your eyes off the road. You can just look there for a second and go back.
Still a terrifying idea. Yeah.
No, that idea was, I think it was interesting. They had several problems. The first problem was that it wasn't cool enough. It meant that there's a word for it, glass holes, which means people that have Google Glass, and everybody kind of at the beginning wanted to see the thing because it's an amazing piece of technology. But then after discovering that people have cameras all the time, it started to get a little creepy. There's a very interesting YouTube channel. This guy called himself Surveillance Camera Guy.
Right.
He goes for other places just with his phone doing like this. And he takes the videos of people. And people are saying to him, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he's not saying anything. He's doing,
he's just doing that.
And the reactions he got,
just kidding.
The reactions he got from people were violent, like physical violent. He got really bad reactions from people who wanted to punch him in the face. When people understand that they're being surveilled, we don't think about it. We have surveillance cameras everywhere. It's not just Google Glass. But Google Glass was out there. It was a lot of pubs decided they won't let Google Glass into their establishments.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Bars actually banned.
Bars actually banned. There's bars
it just feels like this person wearing the glasses is not really with you.
Not
somewhere
really
else.
It's the camera that constantly.
But it's the camera. A lot of bars didn't want to have people filming everything. They wanted the people to have privacy. At least they wanted people to have the sense of privacy, because there
is really no privacy.
Yeah, so in San Francisco, which is the place where there's a lot of Google glasses going around, a lot of glass holes, people started seeing bars and pubs that has the sticker of no Google Glass here. And it started to be like this thing where, Google Glass didn't have a good start. It didn't have really a good start. It had that picture of the glass hole. Fable, he's a very famous tech journalist who took a picture of himself with the glass in the shower, and it looked like white men going with Google Glass. It was just like this. This is why.
But I want to ask you this when it comes to the future of wearable technology, because it's basically that was supposed to be kind of the start of wearable technology in many ways, right? I mean, are we looking at a company that's going to try and redesign this idea? Or because if we're thinking of why it failed, I can understand the privacy thing. I mean, it's annoying as hell to have somebody with you in front of you with that camera thing, and I also don't think that brain-wise it's for us it's probably a confusing thing to have.
Yeah.
But is this the death of wearable
It's not the death
iTech?
of wearable high-tech. There's no way Silicon Valley really wants it to work, and they'll make it work somehow. Smartwatches will see wearable tech on our clothes, and they'll make it work somehow. But the Google Glass thing is, they want to redesign it. They say that it's not the end. They say that they'll take it back to work, and now one of the people who are going to redesign it was a guy from Gap, which means they're thinking that it's just too ugly.
Definitely gap the thing up. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they think maybe it's fashion and not
exactly what it needed.
Yeah, it really needed gap.
They think it's maybe fashion and not the thing itself.
Yeah.
I think it's the camera. The camera and having people understand that you're being filmed every single time.
No, which is ridiculous, because at the end of the day, seriously, I mean, anywhere in the world, if you walk down the street, you're immediately, we are being filmed 24/7 by security cameras from satellites, whatnot.
Yeah.
But fine, it's the illusion of that, and I don't know, maybe we don't need to be connected all the time. It's just my notion of it, because if we were connected all the time, if you had a Google Glass, or you'd been a glass hole right this second, you wouldn't get the attention of Chen Lieberman. Watch this transition.
Wow.
Okay, you wouldn't get this attention. Exactly. Chen Lieberman for the pop culture and anything that's important to know about pop culture and get depressed about pop culture. Exactly. Yes,
so let's talk about beauty pageants, right?
Okay.
You know how contestants in beauty pageants, they talk about world peace and all of that? So it turns out that not all of them mean it. Shocking, right?
Really?
So
Seriously?
let's go to Miss Universe competition in Miami. It's going on right now. And Miss Lebanon and Miss Israel took a selfie together. Miss Israel posted it to her Instagram account. And then the Lebanon television saw this.
Miss Lebanon in jail?
Well, not yet, because she's still in Miami.
She's still in Miami, okay.
Yeah, exactly, so she's safe. But one of the anchors said, if one of her hobbies is reading, she should have read that Lebanon and Israel are enemies. And they're asking her to give back her title as Miss Lebanon. And she, instead of saying, this is a beauty pageant.
It's
on a totally different level. We don't even know what politics are.
Yeah, leave us in our bathing suits alone.
So her defense was, I was trying to avoid Miss Israel. She photobombed me, which is brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's actually.
She said, that from the beginning of the competition, Miss Israel is trying to be friends with her, is trying to get along with her. And then when she was taking a picture with these two other girls on the right, then Miss Israel came and just took a picture herself. But if you, look at the picture.
Put the picture
Miss Israel is the one on the left.
Okay.
It seems like she's the one taking the selfie, so she can't photobomb a selfie that she is taking. The story does not make sense.
Leave Miss Lebanon alone. Come on, I think she wants to go back home.
Right.
I think it's going to be problematic. Yeah, I'm looking at Shai Ringel.
But I mean, she's making Miss Israel look like this pathetic girl who wants friends. But so Miss Israel wasn't apologetic. She posted another post on her Instagram account saying, "It doesn't surprise me, but it still makes me sad. Why can't we just all get along?" Something like that. World peace. So yeah, that's first time it's interesting to talk about Miss Universe competition.
In a way, or maybe to snazz it up. Whoop! There they are. There they are. Yes. Yeah. Whoa.
Maybe it's time to finish this, to end this tradition.
Who knows? Maybe we just put these women in charge. But yes, moving on.
Okay. So now let's talk again about Bill Cosby. It's still on the news, and everybody's asking me, Bill Cosby again? Well, yes, again, because this issue hasn't settled yet. He hasn't responded to any of the allegations, and the worst thing is that he keeps on performing and doing stand-up all around the country. So he's well,
first of all, we don't want to. I don't know. I mean, the question is begged to be asked: do we want the man to hide in his basement? But we have a short story about this, right? A report. So let's take a look and see where the Bill Cosby saga stands.
I think it's pretty disgusting that he continues to do these shows, especially as a performer who built his career on being a clean comic and not using swear words or talking about such topics like rape. And then he's the biggest villain of them all. Yeah. And we think that it's really horrible that people are still supporting him and that they're still contributing to his career and his legacy.
So this actually reactions of
so he did a show in Denver, Colorado, and there were protests outside and also some hecklers inside the show because they're saying he should not be performing until he answers all these allegations. And I know he hasn't been charged with anything, but we're talking about 30 women who said he sexually abused them.
No, it's a staggering number. But I think, to be fair to the American way law system, I mean, there is the notion of, innocent until proven guilty. This has not been dealt in the real law courts. This has been in the court of public opinion.
Right.
So, I mean, ultimately...
But we live in in different dimensions, and it's not only the court, the law room dimension that we live in. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that even if what he did, even if he shouldn't be sitting in jail because of statute of limitations, statute of limitations, that's why they haven't filed any complaints. Now, there is one woman, she's 23 years old, she's a model, and she claims that in 2008, he drugged and raped her in the Playboy Mansion. So that doesn't have the statute of limitations, so she might file a complaint. However, his lawyers already responded saying he was in New York. So, I mean, it's hard to tell whether all these women really had some connection to him.
But that's the thing. That's the fascinating issue about the story. I think that, once these women came out of the woodwork, and I am playing devil's advocate and asking, aren't some of them also just jumping on the wagon because this is such a big mania hysteria in the United States? That said, if you look at, I'm sorry to say, but if you look at the artists, and if you look at Hollywood as an industry, if you look at sexual allegations there, this is not something entirely new. I mean, there seems to be this concerted effort just, not concerted effort, not just to pinpoint him, but it's a huge deal in the court of public opinion.
Yes.
Where it's yet to be proven. Lawyers are responding, I don't know if the man should completely stop his movements.
I mean, okay, females that want to be famous are being sexually abused on a daily basis. There's no doubt about it.
As Shai Ringel would, agree to.
I mean, but the thing is, well, there are
just
two
sit
things.
There and look pretty.
Okay. There are two things about this. The thing with Cosby is, first of all, there was a pattern here of drugging them and then having sex with them. And the second thing is that he pretended to be the total opposite.
The cleanest
so I told you there were hecklers inside the show, and one of the women in the audience, she got up and said she needs to get, she has to get a drink. She wants to drink. So Cosby told her, it's not a good idea to drink next to me. So now he's laughing about it. He's joking about it. I mean, it's a funny joke. He's still quick on responses, but someone else should have said that.
Raises a lot of questions. But finally, moving on.
Okay, Larry David, don't you miss him? I miss him. The last episode
Larry David of fame and Curb Your Enthusiasm, and the man who George is based on.
Exactly. Well,
yes.
I had a line on Curb Your Enthusiasm. I'll show you,
You
next
did?
time. I did.
Oh, wow.
I tell it's $200. That was my line. It's $200. That was my line. But the last episode was in 2011.
Right.
No one knows if there's going to be a next season for Curb, but he's doing a Broadway show. Remember the episode, there were a few episodes where Mel Brooks put him on the producers because he wanted the producers, the Broadway musical,
show, right?
Because he wanted it to be a flop,
right?
And Larry forgot his lines, but it ended up being really funny and not a flop. So now he's really doing a Broadway show. It's called Fish in the Dark. He wrote it. It's about a friend of his dad passed away, and Larry found it funny, so he did a show about it. But he ended up writing a character that's too much like him, so they couldn't find anyone else to play him, so he ends up playing in his own show.
That sounds like a Seinfeld episode.
Exactly, and he's terrified about it. He went to David Letterman to promote it, and he was like, Dave, I got myself in a pickle. It's a pickle. I don't know what to do.
I have to be on Broadway now. I wrote the show.
He said he hoped for the Ebola virus to spread so the city would shut down.
See, this is the kind of humor that myself and Shai Ringel nod. We understand.
Exactly.
It's lovely. I love that. But first of all, here's the world's smallest violin. I'm playing for the sake of Larry David. I feel for him. That said, folks, Shai Ringel, the lovely Chen Liman, thank you for being with us this morning. This is it for us. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Twitter. Of course, also check out Shai Ringel's show, The Tube, today at 10:10 local time. And, of course, tune in tomorrow for another morning edition of I-24 News. Morning edition, the place you should be every single day. Thank you very much. Yes.